So we have a lot of students from French, Spanish, Portuguese-speaking countries, and they were all educated in the so-called fixed dou. And actually, I hate that system for several reasons. One of the reasons is that it doesn't have any musical meaning. So if you say do or re, it can mean everything actually. So the do is the C or the C flat or the C sharp. It can be part of C major, but also part of A flat major, and so forth and so forth. So those solmization syllables are only saying something about the pitch. And I think music is not about pitches, but it is about pitch relations. And fixed do doesn't teach you anything in those relations. The point is that when you are trained very toughly in that system, then you develop a kind of absolute pitch ear, which is admired by many people. But I think that it doesn't help you to be a better musician. And on some moment, for instance, when you are listening to a piece by Vivaldi, for instance, in a tuning of 415, those people are completely lost because it doesn't fit with their drilling system of the fixed dou. So I always favored the movable dou, let's say the Kodai system. It's much more than just movable dou, solfeggio. It's a whole philosophy about music. But a few years ago, I just decided to give up, and because it was a sort of struggle that I was always losing to try to learn to teach Spanish or French students in the movable dou. It was terrible. So I decided to stop with that. But at that very moment, they stopped learning anything. So I didn't see any development anymore. At the same time, I learned about the Italian solfeggio method, and as I already said before, I was already educated and trained in the hexachordal system of the Renaissance. And some 8 or 9 years ago, I started to teach on our early music department. And I thought, this is a big chance because they all came from fixed dou countries, everybody. And I had to teach them something of historical solfège. It's a bit anachronistic because solfège is of later day than the solfeggio of the Renaissance, of course. But anyway, it was called historical solfège. And I thought this is a good chance to introduce to them the hexachord system for several reasons. First of all, it was an old system, and they were old musicians, so that's good. Yeah? So that was a bit of a trick, a pedagogical trick. On the other hand, the hexachord system is partly covering the fixed dou because the hexachord naturale, starting on C, is exactly the ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la of the French. So partly they could recognize the system. And I started with that, and it was a big success, actually, because everybody loved it, and a lot of very positive evaluations. So that was for me the start to develop, first of all, the Renaissance system. But then Nick came on with his book, and with his talk already a few years before. And I thought that's a big chance to also use the system in later styles. So at the very moment that the book came out, or already even before, I started my classes with that. And to my own surprise, and my students were very enthusiastic. And I got comments of them that they learned for the first time in their life something meaningful in a theory class. uh, so, and I think, in a way, I understand them because when you talk about now, let's not talk anymore about the fixed dose system, but when you talk, for instance, about Roman numerals, um, making music to some sort of chord progression, I always compare it with the salami sauces with some slices of chords. That has not so much to do, I think, with music. But when you approach music in a more horizontal way, of course, which is solfeggio or that um, old solfeggio system, the hexachord system, it is all about relations. It's all about horizontality, and together with Bob's fantastic theory about the schemas, it offered a fantastic tool to think in terms of music in a very horizontal way. Just to end my what I want to say is when you are a pianist or an organist, you are a sort of used to think in terms of chords. I remember that when I was 7 or 8 years old, I really liked to play chords. And I like to accompany myself when I was singing a little tune or something like that. But for violin players or trombone players or whatever players, chords is something abstract, and they think in terms of melody. And so I think yeah, this is one of the things that is so important, and why maybe my students found it so important and so meaningful to learn it in that way.